Hello viewers and welcome to yet another commentated match of Warhammer 40,000 Conquest. My name is Mitch and I am the Hive Tyrant. Today we're featuring Sam Mann playing as Commander Shadowsun up against the likes of Paul Steiner, who happens to be playing the Astra Militarum Warlord, kind of a trademark of his, Torquemada Coteaz. Both of our players are picking whether or not they want to mulligan their opening hands, so in assessing our opening layout of planets, planet number 1 is Iridial, which removes damage. Planet number 2 is going to be Farron, which routes non-warlords. Planet 3 is Taurus, which rewards a player for keeping their unit total lower than their opponent. And planet number 4 is going to be Yavvarn, which puts units into play directly to HQ. Planet number 5, last but not least, is going to be Planum, which allows for the movement of non-warlords. It looks as though Sam decided to keep his opening hand, as did Paul Steiner. So for Commander Shadowsun, planet number 1, we see a Warlord Marksman. He's now got command of that planet. We end up seeing a Catachan outpost put out to Paul Steiner's HQ, and our second play of the game for Sam, who has the initiative token, is not just ranged, but also an ion rifle. So the Warlord Marksman is attacking for 4. Paul Steiner puts out a Tallarn Raiders, which will be a 2/2 so long as a Warlord is present at that planet, and quickly running out of deploy action, Sam uses his one limited play of the round to do a recon drone to planet number 5. Sam happens to have a gun drones in his hand, which can be deployed via ambush platform should he happen to draw one, but he cannot actually put that into play through Commander Shadowsun's ability. He could do this Shadowsun stealth cadre, but we'll have to see how things go, and his third and final attachment option happens to be this heavy marker drone, which doubles damage taken by units. Paul Steiner ends up putting out a copy of Shoot 'em Mob onto planet number 3, so he's winning command on 2 and 3. Planet number 1 is going to be a very frightening place for Torquemada to go, so I definitely wouldn't be surprised to see him go to planet number 5 to try to kill off that recon drone. He's not really going to be able to benefit from Planum's ability, I don't think, but Coteaz can benefit from that Catachan outpost to augment his normally 0 attack value, so he could, in all likelihood, kill off that recon drone. And then for Commander Shadowsun herself, I could see potentially Taurus would be a decent target, or maybe Farron, but Shadowsun is really not any good at killing off units, so I could potentially also see Shadowsun going to planet number 1 and just affixing that stealth cadre onto the Warlord Marksman there. But it looks like the actions aren't done, so Paul, in order to protect that Shoot 'em Mob, puts out a copy of Snakebite Thug, a 3/4 unit, to planet number 3, and it looks as though our Commander Shadowsun only has 3 units. Torquemada ends up with 4 units, and Shadowsun is definitely not going to want to go to Taurus, even though she could potentially win some resources there, and Paul just keeps them coming. So this is going to be another Snakebite Thug, but where exactly is he going to put it out? It could be killed in a single shot by the marksman, but he ends up putting it to the first planet, so that's very interesting indeed. Note that Paul does happen to have a single shield icon here, so even if he doesn't draw any additional shield cards, he could at least prevent that Snakebite Thug from being killed in a single blow. He could have it... Well, it kind of sucks. He'd have to have 2 shields, but he could have it attack, wound that marksman. But Coteaz ends up going to planet number 5, so let's see how this all goes out here. Shadowsun goes to planet number 1. The reaction triggers to do Shadowsun Stealth Cadre onto the Warlord Marksman, making it immediately a 6/4 ranged unit, so command is going to be 1 at planet number 1 for Shadowsun, and very surprisingly, Paul Steiner's actually winning command at 3 different planets, so he nicely trumps the 2 command icon recon drone. He's going to be able to kill that. I suppose that Snakebite Thug was just perhaps a little bit of a lure to try to get Shadowsun to commit to the first planet. The Snakebite Thug is going to be handily destroyed in a single blow, and we ended up seeing Sam reel in 1 card, 0 resources, which was another heavy marker drone, and Paul Steiner ended up with 2 cards and 4 resources. So the first planet happened to be Iridial, there's no healing to be done. That Viorla marksman is now going to re-enter combat exhausted. Hopefully, Paul will have some clever means of killing off that unit. He does happen to have a No Mercy. He's also got a Seraphim Superior Allegra, which would be fantastic to attack, augmented by the Catachan outpost, deal out damage, ready the Catachan outpost, have Torquemada deal out some damage, but Paul Steiner ends up augmenting his Coteaz with Catachan Outpost at planet number 5. He takes a swing at the recon drone. We end up seeing a copy of Heavy Marker Drone discarded as shields. That means that Sam ends up surviving, and it looks as though we're actually going to see, for the first time in my life, a stalemate check at the 5th and final planet there. So Sam is actually going to win. Well, I suppose neither player actually wins that battle, so there's a stalemate, and I suppose the Warlord retreats. So I'm not exactly sure what the stalemate rules are, but Coteaz has an unmodified 0 attack value, and the recon drones, of course, as well, also have 0, so headquarters phase comes and goes. Aatrox Prime is going to be our new 5th planet. It deals out damage to HQ or an adjacent planet. Sam ended up getting his 2 cards being the gun drones, another Shadowsun stealth cadre. Paul Steiner ended up getting a copy of the Iron Guard recruits, and it looks like he drew and subsequently deployed a second copy of the Catachan outpost. And if he gets Seraphim Superior Allegra into play, that's just an insane amount of attack damage he can deal out, regardless as to how many attachments Sam can potentially stack onto one unit. And now Paul is set up pretty favorably for taking the next several planets. He's got 2-2. Well, 2-2, presuming a Warlord touches down at the first planet, and then he's got just a fair few different units at planet number 2 here, so he could send his Warlord pretty much anywhere he'd like. Curiously, Sam puts a promotion onto that recon drones there, and I suppose that's a little bit of a confusing choice, but I'm wondering if he's just trying to lure Coteaz away from the first couple planets here, so we did see Sam end up winning the first planet. He's got a blue, green, and red icon, but if Paul Steiner captures these next 3 planets, he could win the game, or if of any of these 3 planets, Sam ends up winning 2 of them, that'll put him at 3 red icons, and he'll be the victor. So I think a problem here for Commander Shadowsun is we aren't seeing a lot of bodies out on the field. We've got 2 copies of gun drones, 1 Shadowsun stealth cadre in his hand, and it looks as though he's deciding to put out a copy of gun drones as a unit to planet number 3. Certainly not something you see too tremendously often. Certainly, I think, a first for Sam in all the videos I've seen from him. But Paul gets to keep on taking actions. Paul's down to 2 resources, 4 cards, as he puts out an Iron Guard recruits, quite nicely trumping that 1 command icon gun drones, so we're actually seeing a Tau player getting wrecked in regard to command, so that's certainly not something you see every day. But another Tallarn Raiders comes out, ends up being put at planet number 5, so that's going to be able to allow Paul Steiner to win command there. Going to be a glut of cards and resources to fund effects like the Seraphim Superior, the Coteaz Henchman here. He ended up putting out a copy of the Evil Sun's Warbiker to planet number 1, and he's just making things incredibly bad for Sam, regardless where he ends up sending his unit. Even though this happens to be a ranged attacker, if it's going to be a battle taking place at that planet, at planet number 1 or 2, or hell, even 5, if Paul gets an opportunity to attack, he can augment whatever unit he'd like with 2 Catachan outposts, and that's a +4 attack bonus. Even this Iron Guard recruits would be swinging for 5, so that's just incredibly nasty, and it's nice that Shadowsun will essentially gain the initiative token, but I'm going to go ahead and say Coteaz might go to planet number 4. Definitely, I was anticipating Sam would go to planet number 3 with his Warlord, just because he's going to want initiative, so the gun drones could hopefully kill off the opposition prior to Paul having the opportunity to trigger those outposts and deal out a tremendous amount of damage here. We've got some shield icons in Sam's hand, and we do have a shield in Paul's hand as well. So Coteaz did go to planet number 4. Coteaz is going to be winning command on 4 different planets. Very impressive play here. 3 cards, 5 resources for Paul, 1 resource for Sam, and he's very much getting choked out of cards, and he's kind of running low on resources as well. We did end up seeing a Shadowsun stealth cadre put onto those gun drones, and that's very nice, just because had that not happened, we could have seen the gun drones do their area effect 2 volley. Paul could have spent that copy of No Mercy as shields just to keep that unit alive, then it could have taken a swing for 5 damage or something like that. But it looks as though both players indicate they have no actions. Entering combat, a battle is going to take place at the first planet, and I wasn't paying attention to it, but the first planet happens to be Farron. The gun drones with their associated Shadowsun stealth cadre end up being routed, so that 4/4 area effect 2 is routed. That means only the Iron Guard recruits remain, and if Shadowsun would like to stay and duke it out with these Iron Guard recruits, then that's going to be a fantastic opportunity for the recruits to take a swing of 5 in return, thanks to these 2 Catachan outposts. And given that that planet is Yavar, I could certainly see Paul Steiner potentially triggering that effect just to get that Seraphim into play, just judging on how Commander Shadowsun deck normally doesn't have a tremendous wealth of units here. So it looks as though Sam is actually using his command action to retreat. So it's going to be the Iron Guard recruits are going to have free reign to likely take a swing of 5 against the Viorlaw marksman here. So Paul Steiner happens to have 1 red icon, Sam has 1 icon of each kind, and now I'm very curious to see how the battles at the next couple planets end up going, because either player could potentially win through red icons. So Sam only has a 2 shield icon card in hand. I'll be curious to see if he ends up using it as shields, because the Iron Guard recruits, augmented by both Catachan outposts, ends up attacking for 5 against the Viorlaw marksman, and the Viorlaw marksman has 4 hit points. So Sam, very luckily, is going to be able to keep it. Oh my god, but I forgot about that copy of No Mercy, and that means that shield card is going to be negated entirely, and that means the Viorlaw marksman is going to be outright slain, and that heavy marker drone is going to be gone. So Sam only has 1 card in hand at the present moment, and Paul Steiner's sitting on 5 cards. So 1 card for Sam, a gun drones, granted, very valuable card, but Paul has got 5. So Paul does decide to trigger Yavar, and that's going to be a copy of the Seraphim Superior, and he's definitely playing the odds here. So we see a copy of gun drones put into play at Sam's HQ. He does not have a choice. He basically has to, so that's just a fantastic opportunity for him to do that. And now it looks like Coteaz is going to retreat at the end of that combat there, so it's going to be yet another stalemate at planet number, well, soon to be 4. Because it's 2 0-cost units, so we see our HQ phase come and go. Next planet is going to be Barless, so the last one in line. It's the forced random card discard planet. Sam draws 2 cards, Paul draws 2 cards. Sam has 12 resources relative to Paul's 10, and we see a Pathfinder She Ores put into play at planet number 1. So planet number 1 is currently Taurus. It's looking as though our unit counts are relatively similar, but I believe Paul definitely is pulled ahead, and we see the Formosan signature support Black Ship put into play. So as soon as a non-token unit is sacrificed, that's going to be 2 guardsman tokens put into play at that same planet. Granted, Sam has gun drones all over the place. Those area effect 2 volleys are going to be fantastic for killing off guardsman tokens, but a lot of these gun drones are going to be arriving exhausted. Sam has no cards in hand, so Paul can rest assured that there's not going to be a For the Tau Va played to, result in the untimely, readying of Pathfinder She Ores, or this gun drones here to just deal out a tremendous amount of damage. So I'll be curious to see where exactly Paul goes. This Pathfinder is going to be able to do area effect 2, then it could sacrifice its gun drones to ready and attack for 3. So it's a very, very nasty unit indeed. I'm curious to see if Paul is going to end up going to the first planet or just skipping it and then blocking Sam at each subsequent first planet just to do like a longer game but a more guaranteed victory. So Paul does a copy of Staging Ground, which is going to be absolutely great for dodging those area effect volleys, for putting a unit anywhere that Commander Shadowsun might end up going. We see another copy of Tallarn Raiders put out at the fifth planet, so that's going to be one command icon that allows him to potentially draw a couple cards there. And now it's going to be very, very tricky indeed. It looks like Paul is winning command at 4 different planets, so are we going to see Paul go to, I suppose he could go anywhere. So Paul only has the 1 red icon. Let's say he picks up a red icon at Yvonne. He could also snag a red icon at Aatrox Prime. So maybe he's going to go for planet number 2, planet number 4. For Sam, I could definitely see him just going to planet number 1 and just trying to bully the first planet to potentially win. I could see him going to planet number 2 to try to set himself up favorably for that. But I think he's definitely going to he's going to have to try and just keep all of his forces together as one big clump, just to ensure that Paul isn't going to be able to pick them apart. But I'll be very curious to see here how combat goes. The initiative token is going to be in Sam's hands, so is Sam going to go to planet number 2? Seems like Paul goes to planet number 2, and Sam just decides to bully the first planet, and this is going to set him up very badly for the following round unless he ends up drawing a copy of that for the Tau Va, just because his entire force here might just end up brutally murdered unless he decides to forego a deployment to Yvonne. So Sam uses his reaction from Commander Shadowsun to affix a heavy marker drone onto that Snakebite Thug, and as far as I'm concerned, unless Paul decides to shield, and he'll have to draw a shield card in order to be able to do so, then he's not going to be able to save the Snakebite Thug here from being just outright obliterated in a single area effect attack. Looks like Paul was not so fortunate as to actually draw shields, so I'll be curious as to whether or not we end up seeing a copy of the Staging Ground, putting unit into play like this Evil Sun's Warbiker just to try to kill off one of these copies of gun drones, just because all things equivalent, every 2 resources and card that Paul uses, it's going to work out in his favor because he's shrinking the game. He can try to maintain that advantage against Sam and try to take away everything Sam has to use against him. So 2 cards, 2 resources for Sam. It's going to be 3 cards and 2 resources for Paul Steiner. We end up seeing that area effect volley take place at Taurus. Paul does not decide to even try to save the Shoot-a-Mob or the Snakebite Thug, but granted, he didn't have any shield cards to do so. That Staging Ground ends up being exhausted. He's got 2 different Catachan outpost at his disposal, so are we going to see a kill here? Are we going to have the Evil Sun's Warbiker kill off Pathfinder Shiораce? Are we going to try for a bloodying of Commander Shadowsun? Shadowsun doesn't strike me as the most dangerous in regard to ability, but a bloodying could certainly be pretty welcome. Sam only happens to have a 1 shield value card in his hand. I don't know if Paul is betting on that or not, but we see the Evil Sun's Warbiker's attack augmented up to 8, and it's going to take a swing at Shadowsun, so no matter what, Shadowsun is going to be bloodied, and Sam is left with no other option than to accept his fate. A promotion is not going to result in that being brought down to a stomachable amount of damage. So for I think the first time in my career, I end up seeing a bloodied Commander Shadowsun, so no damage to bloodied. That's pretty impressive. Now Shadowsun ends up being a 1/5. I happen to forget just how squishy she happens to be, and given the presence of this Staging Ground, unless Sam's first action happens to be always retreating with Commander Shadowsun, given the presence of these 2 Catachan outposts, it's a fantastic opportunity for Paul to put into play like a Snakebite Thug, swing for 7, and then unless Sam happens to have like a Command Link drones in his hand, or now Fireblade Kyvray is a thing, and he complicates matters further, but things are starting to look all the way bad for Sam in regard to a possible Warlord victory. We do see that battle won by Sam, but at what cost here? So it's going to be 3 cards reeled in by Sam: Warlock, Destructor, Viorlaw, Marksman, and of course Fireblade Kyvray. The Evil Sun's Warbiker retreated at the end of the combat round there, and now I'm just deadly curious to see how is Sam going to try to keep himself alive. There's going to be a battle at Yvonne, and I can't imagine that Paul Steiner is going to, well, maybe he'll put a unit into play like this Inquisitor Caius Roth, but let's see. Is Paul going to trigger Yvarn? It looks as though Sam indicates he has no actions. Paul indicates no actions, so the battle is going to be won. We see Coteaz retreat, and in regard to an ability, it is not looking to be activated, so Sam indicates that he too is done, and that's going to bring combat to a close. We're going to advance to our headquarters phase. It's going to be 4 resources and 2 cards for both players. I'm quite curious to see what Sam ends up with here. He's definitely probably wanting a For the Tau Va, and I'm also very curious to see when Paul Steiner gets to be a devious bit of a bastard and put this Inquisitor Caius Roth into play. Oh, ouch! So this is going to be a preemptive barrage. So okay, we could potentially see, well, first of all, there's a Rattling Deadeye plus Staging Ground plus 2 Catachan Outposts means it's attacking for 5. We could potentially see Commander Shadowsun bloodied, but we could also see like a Coteaz Henchman Staging Grounded into play at the beginning of combat, then prior to the first combat round. We could see that augmented with a preemptive barrage. So there are a lot of interesting assassination possibilities suddenly becoming possible. Sam happens to have 2 different 1 shield icon cards, so I think it's possible that he could prevent himself from being assassinated, but let's see how exactly this goes. We see an Interrogator Acolyte put into play at planet number 2, and given that Paul happens to have just a board full of units here, I suppose I should take a moment to actually look at our board. Wherever Commander Shadowsun ends up going, there's going to be at least a 2-attack Imperial Guard unit sitting at that planet. It can be augmented by Catachan Outposts, and we can use Preemptive Barrage to give it ranged. We could also have a Staging Ground put a Rattling Deadeye into play alongside it, and we could see a Staging Ground also put a, well, I suppose it's going to be one or the other, the Deadeye or the Coteaz Henchman, but suffice it to say, a lot of nasty stuff coming up in the ranged phase, based upon where Commander Shadowsun, only 5 hit points, ends up going. So a Snakebite Thug is going to interplay, put into play at planet number 2. Sam currently has 11 resources, 6 cards. Paul has 6 resources and 5 cards. So a lot of devious stuff here from Steiner. And Commander Shadowsun is no longer going to be able to bounce any of these units into play. So much to Sam's good fortune, we do see the Command Link drone drawn. That's going to be his 3 shield icon card. But will he play it, or will he use it as shields? We see a Viorla Marksman put into play at, it looks like, planet number 2. And that's going to be a great opportunity for that to deliver some sort of ranged skirmish attack. Quite wisely, we see our planets spread out a little bit here just to make some room. So the first planet is now far away from planet number 2, and there's no longer any question in my mind as to whether or not the Viorla Marksman is sitting at planet number 1 or 2. So, once again, Paul has 1 red icon, Sam has 2 red, 2 green, 1 blue. So if Sam wins a battle at Yvarn, or if he wins a battle at planet number 1 or planet number 2, he'll be able to win this game. And of course, the same thing goes at planet number 3 or 4. So basically what I'm trying to say is that if Sam wins a battle at any planet, any first planet, he's going to win the game. And now I think it's going to be up to Paul to just kind of distribute the wealth, put out these units among any different number of planets here, just to try and distribute as much preemptive barrage type range skirmish damage to potentially assassinate Commander Shadowsun. But we've got 2 1-value shield icon cards, and we've got a Command Link drone with a value of 3. So even if Paul gets a wealth of ranged attacks in, we could potentially see Commander Shadowsun prevent a lot of that. But the Rattling Deadeye splashes down on planet number 2. There's certainly a lot of ranged units here at planet number 2, the Viorla Marksman, the Rattling Deadeye. But if there's a battle, if the initiative is indeed in Paul Steiner's hand, then he could very well use these Catachan Outposts, use preemptive barrage, kill off any number of nasty enemy units like the Pathfinder, these gun drones. They're very threatening units, but Sam doesn't happen to have a For the Tau Va, and if we could see one of our, Imperial Guard laden planets just suddenly gain a bunch of ranged, kill off all that stuff, then that's going to be of critical importance here. So Fireblade Kyve Ray ends up being put out to planet number 2, and that makes me think that this is where Sam is going to go. He's going to be able to augment all of his shielding effects. The command link drone is going to be worth 4, ion rifle is going to be worth 2, and he's got that promotion. He's probably not going to win command on a lot of different planets, but I could definitely see Coteaz going to planet number 2, and then just things could get really, really brutal here. So it's definitely going to be a bit of tricky combat math that Paul Steiner would have to do, but we could definitely potentially see Commander Shadowsun assassinated. If Coteaz gains ranged, he's attacking for 3, the Deadeye is attacking for 1, we could see the Interrogator Acolyte attacking for 2, the Henchman attacking for 1. It could be sacrificed so that Coteaz does his attack, and of course that means Guardsman tokens, and with that preemptive barrage, just a lot of deadly stuff going on here. So we see an ion rifle put out to the Viorla Marksman, so it's going to be basically a 4-2 range skirmish phase attacker. Paul indicates that he is now passed, and it's going to be up to Sam. Sam has 4 resources, 2 cards, relative to Steiner's 1 resource and 2 cards. We're about to go into the command phase. I'm personally predicting both of our players are going to send their warlords to planet number 2, but what exactly are we going to see? Sam actually plays out a promotion, so I'm curious as to whether this is ultimately going to come back and bite him, but a very intelligent target here. He puts it out to Pathfinder She Orace in his headquarters, and that's going to allow him to ready that unit, albeit once per phase, so I suppose Sam is presuming that this unit is going to survive. So it looks as though Paul has decided where he'd like to send his warlord. I'm going to predict well, this is a little bit tricky. I guess Paul is basically going to have to pick planet number 1, just to make sure that Sam doesn't manage to deviously win through being sent to that planet. But we do have that staging ground. Maybe Paul will end up drawing enough units. So are we going to see Coteaz go to planet number 2? Yes, we actually see both players indeed go to planet number 2. Looks like Sam wasn't ballsy enough, I guess, to go to planet number 1. And Paul made my kind of play where you almost have, you put too much faith in your opponent to not take the earliest opportunity to win the game. So I'll often send my warlord to planet number 2, hoping that my opponent will play more control-y, but of course that ends up not being the case and I would lose. But now we've got a very exciting combat on our hand here. 1 card, 1 resource for Sam, 1 card, 2 resources for Paul, and that's going to be a Vashia Trailblazer and a command link drone in Sam's hand. So only 1, albeit 4 shield icon card thanks to the Fireblade here. And we see basically a couple useless cards and a preemptive barrage. So there's going to be a battle taking place at Yavvarn. It ends up being captured, and are we going to see it activated? Looks like Paul Steiner doesn't indicate one way or the other, so I'm going to go ahead and assume probably not. So, we're going to see a battle at Planum. Are we going to see that preemptive barrage? Let's see how things are going down. We've got a 4-2 range skirmisher. We've got a 3-4 warlock destructor. We've got Commander Shadowsun, 1-5. If Shadowsun is killed, that's going to be the game. But Paul would have to do a single attack of 9 to be able to kill it off. We end up seeing our first attack, a Rattling Deadeye, is going to be 1 point of damage on Commander Shadowsun, which is very, very sneaky here. I think he's going to deal out as much damage as he can, probably incrementally, just to try to kill off some of these units. But it looks like we see this Viorla Marksman exhaust. I'm frankly almost slightly surprised we didn't see like the Pathfinder try to kill off something, but it's going to be the Viorla Marksman killing the copy of Coteaz Henchman, and they're going to be gone. They'd have allowed an kind of unique opportunity to, when that unit leaves play, ready the Warlord. So we could have seen Coteaz attack, sacrifice that Henchman. But now, what else are we going to see here? I suppose we're still within the ranged skirmish phase. So we see 2 Guardsman tokens occur. We saw an Evil Sun's Warbiker sacrificed. Now we see a preemptive barrage. So it looks like the ranged are going to be a Guardsman, Coteaz, and an Interrogator. So Coteaz is currently sitting at an attack value of 3, and now this is where things are going to go all the way bad for Sam. So we see a Catachan Outpost exhaust, and it's going to target what? Yes, as I presumed, it's going to target Coteaz. So for his next attack, he's got a grand total of 5 attack strength. He's going to take a swing at Shadowsun, and Sam is going to have to discard this 4 value shield card in order to negate most of that damage, but Shadowsun is only going to be at 3 hit points remaining. And what do we see? We see a Catachan Outpost. We see this Interrogator Acolyte to attack for 2. We see a Guardsman token, so it's very narrow, but we're actually going to see a victory via Warlord Assassination. The Interrogator Acolyte is augmented up to 4. It's going to be taking a swing to Commander Shadowsun, and I could definitely be wrong, but I think it may have been actually more beneficial to have that Guardsman token augmented and to have it attack. But regardless, we see Commander Shadowsun outright destroyed by the Interrogator Acolyte. Therefore, we have an assassination victory through Torquemada Coteaz. So congratulations to Paul Steiner for winning. Very well played by his opposition, Sam Mann. An absolutely fantastic spectacle of a game here. So I'll just conclude this video by saying thank you so much to both Paul and Sam for allowing me the opportunity to record this spectacular match. Thank you for viewing, and as always, I'll just end this video by saying, if you enjoyed this video, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe to my channel if you've not done so already. Or if you are already subscribed, as ever, you're always encouraged to share this content, as the more viewers there are that stumble upon these videos, the more people might end up liking what they see. Give Conquest a try, join our community, and of course, all together we always send the message to Fantasy Flight Games to continue to support this fantastic product. So if at any point you'd like to get in touch with me to have me spectate, record, and commentate a match of your own, I'd encourage you to do so through Twitter or through Facebook. And of course, if at any point you feel so kind, so generous as to donate $1 or $2 to my cause to help me recover some of my file hosting and operating expenses on a strictly monthly basis, I'd be honored were you to visit my Patreon. But as ever, thank you so much for watching, and once again, be sure to check back in again soon for ever more Conquest LCG content to come.